Well, we move to Acts 13 and following, and the second half of Acts, basically 13 to 28, and I'm dividing it where I think it more or less divides itself, so that the first chunk of this is 13 to 20, and then tomorrow morning we'll look at 21 through 28. I appreciate the enormity of taking these great big slices of Acts, but I hope it is being some use anyway to give you that sort of overview picture. And so we get now hook, line and sinker into Paul, and I cannot resist reminding you of the bishop who said plaintively, everywhere St. Paul went there was a riot, everywhere I go they serve tea. And it sort of sums up what's wrong with the church in our day that should be so. I mean, I like tea, as some of you know, but why aren't there riots when we go about our work? That's kind of an interesting question. Just leave that hanging in the air and we'll see, we may come back to it. Paul, I beg your pardon? Well, that's fine. Just somewhere else, please. You know, that's fine. I'll stay with the tea. You can have the riot down the road somewhere. It's cognate actually with the question which I asked somebody earlier today. We're talking about Bob Dylan. In the last 6 or 7 years, where was the next generation's Dylan when we needed him? Imagine what Dylan, age 25, would have done in the last 6 or 7 years. Why wasn't there somebody doing that stuff? That's a serious question. It's like when we play guitars and so on, those of us who grew up in the 60s, we do that stuff. That was our vintage. And when I go to churches in my diocese now and they have worship songs with worship leaders, when they're my age, when they've got more hair down here than up here, etc., and they're still strumming away, kidding themselves that it's still, 1967 and all is well with the revolutionary world, I say to them, actually, where are the 17-year-olds? They should be doing this. I hope in your churches you have lots of 17, 18-year-olds doing this stuff, playing whichever instruments they want with. This shouldn't just be a retro thing. How are we moving this forward? Again, these are questions which are hanging in the air, partly while my brain gets into gear for what I think I want to talk to you about tonight. Again, the second half of Acts, as the first half, lordship and worship, the big themes. But now, it's not simply the church engaging with its own world, the world of Judaism. It is the church as a Jewish community manqué, or perhaps you should say a Jewish community fulfilled, taking on the pagan world. And the underlying themes here are the themes of travel, the journey, going to the ends of the earth, beginning to get a sense that we are going to Rome, even though we're not there yet. We'll get there tomorrow. And particularly, the nature of Paul's work, what it is that he does. And as I was going through these notes again today, I was struck by the way in which you can take key well-known phrases from Paul's letters and actually superimpose them as titles for bits of the Acts of the Apostles. And again in tonight's bit, it is, I am not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God for salvation to the Jew first and also the Greek. That's not just a theological theory. You can see Paul doing it in Acts. And I know there are plenty of historical debates about the historicity of Acts and whether Paul actually did it exactly as it says and so on. But it seems to me, from all that he says in his letters, that the pattern of the work that we see set out in Acts really does make the sense, the theological sense. This is the way that Paul would have gone about it. So Acts 13 to 20, which is what we're taking tonight, again divides quite conveniently into 3 easy chunks. First 13 and 14, setting the scene, sketching out the initial themes. Here is Paul going out in his initial foray into the pagan world with all the puzzles that come from that. And then as a kind of a reflex of that, you have to pause and take stock and say, wait a minute, just what are we up to here? And chapter 15 is the whole church saying, wait a minute, just what are we up to here? Is it okay to take the gospel to these pagans and not to require them to become basically Jewish by becoming proselytes, by the men becoming circumcised and so on? And then once that has been sorted, that's the middle bit, chapter 15, we get into chapter 16 through 20, which is basically Luke's summary of Paul's main mission. Once he moves from Asia Minor into Europe, we get Philippi, we get Thessalonica, Berea, Athens, Corinth, and Ephesus in quick succession. I hadn't realized until I was working on Acts for Everyone just what a page-turner Acts is. You know, you get one great big crunchy incident, and then you turn over the page, and then there's another one, and then another one. You know, here's the Paul's nearly being stoned to death in Lystra, and he has that interchange with the crowds there. And then we get back home from there, and then we're off to Jerusalem for the Apostolic Conference, and that's massive. And then Paul has the big row with Barnabas at the end of that, and they go their separate ways. And just as we're getting over that, my goodness, we're in Philippi, and we're in jail, and there's an earthquake, and the jailer gets converted. Phew, and we're just recovering from that, and now we're in Athens in chapter 17, and here is this great big set-piece speech with Paul taking on the greybeards in the highest court in the ancient philosophical land. And then, just as we're getting over from that, we're in Corinth, and after that we're in Ephesus, and it's another riot, and then, well, you know, it's just absolutely breathtaking. Now, of course, as I said last night, this is not happening one day this, one day that, one day the other. Paul, fortunately, was not blessed with a helicopter or anything like that, and he's taking quite a while in between times, but the way Luke has told it, it is this stunning one thing after another, with a crescendo of him preaching to the Jews and getting a hostile reception, preaching to the Gentiles. Sometimes it's in dialogue and sometimes it's hostile, and then these riots, and then the explanations. This is what we're actually about. An explanation which is, as I said earlier today, an anticipation of what you get in the 2nd century with the apologists, saying to the pagans, yes, we are different. Yes, we are marching to a different drummer. But actually, look at who we are. Look at what we're doing. We are not being wicked. We are actually keeping the moral standards which you say you'd like to keep, but you're not terribly good at it. We're actually doing that stuff. We are actually making people's lives and communities better. And the underlying question then, is Paul really a loyal Jew? And if so, what does that mean? And if not, what? Is he actually a danger to Roman order? And if not, why not? And if so, what does that mean? And these are the questions which are then going to dominate in the last bit of Acts when we get one trial scene or semi-trial scene after another. Is Paul really plotting to destroy Judaism, or is he actually being loyal to the traditions of the fathers? And likewise, is he actually a threat to the Roman order? Ought he to be on trial at all? And these questions are kind of building up, but we'll get to that.